Hi, everyone. Today we are going to review another horrible case with you. Please support my channel, click on subscribe, and on the bell. Crimes driven by passion, jealousy, or hatred are often the most brutal, ruthless, and bloodthirsty. These include various types of violent actions, but most commonly involve cases where individuals and the life of another. Those motivated by personal reasons to deal with their victim often leave little to no chance for escape. Such offenses are committed not only by men, as one might assume. Women can sometimes match them in cruelty and inhumanity. Experienced investigators can immediately recognize the patterns and characteristic signs of crimes driven by hatred and passion, but all versions must be examined, starting with the one presented by the possible witness. In the case of the brutal attack on the mother of multiple children, Sima Khan, there were numerous questions from the very beginning. Initially, it was considered that a strong man had ended her life, so severe and extensive were the injuries inflicted upon her. Since the victim was of Pakistani descent, many suspected that what happened to her was an honor crime committed by relatives for bringing shame upon the family. However, the truth turned out to be far more shocking and ultimately destroyed the once large and happy Khan family. Relatives were indeed involved, as were corrupt passion and a deep secret kept for many years. The Happy Khan family. The Khan couple, originally from Pakistan, emigrated to the UK in the early 1980s in search of a better life. They settled in Luton, located in the southern part of the ceremonial county of Bedfordshire, about 50 miles from London. In 1982, the couple's first child, a daughter named Sima, was born. 7 years later, in 1989, the family welcomed their second daughter, Sabah, followed by two long-awaited sons. From a young age, Sima became a true support and helped for her parents. While they worked tirelessly to provide their children with everything necessary and ensure them a decent life, the eldest daughter practically became a nanny for her younger siblings. She kept the house in order, cooked meals, and still managed to excel in school, becoming one of the top students in her class. The parents had a small business, which allowed the family to settle in a prestigious area in a spacious townhouse. As raising children is a priority in a Muslim family, the couple raised their heirs following Islamic traditions while also striving to give them a good education. The daughters and sons took pride in their culture, honored their customs, but were open to learning new things and free to choose their professions. Sima and Sabah had been inseparable since childhood. They shared their deepest secrets, felt mutual support, and always knew they could rely on each other in everything. The sisters were fluent in both English and Dutch, as the family had lived in Amsterdam for several years. All the children excelled in school and were a great source of pride for their parents. Arranged marriage, Sima was always a kind, compassionate, and very caring young woman. She sought to help others, which led her to enroll in a medical college after finishing high school. She successfully graduated in 2003 and worked as a nurse in one of the local hospitals for a while. Soon after, she decided to slightly change her career path and began working as a caregiver. This allowed Sima to set her own schedule and work hours, which was very convenient since she continued to look after her younger siblings. Sabah admired her older sister and tried to follow her example in everything. Even as they grew older, the sisters remained inseparable and very close. It seemed that this would always be the case, as who could be closer than one's own sister? When Sima turned 22, her parents began to consider marrying off their eldest daughter. They reached out to relatives living in Pakistan to find a suitable husband for her. Although Sima was born and raised in Europe, where people held more liberal views, she respected her culture's traditions and did not resist, agreeing to tie her fate to a man she had never even met. It's worth noting that arranged marriages are still a common practice in Pakistan. Moreover, marriage to a citizen of a European country is sometimes the only reliable and quick way to obtain citizenship, leave, and dramatically change one's life. For this reason, marriages are often arranged between relatives or people with a significant age difference. The process of finding a groom took some time. but since Sima wasn't in a hurry to marry, she didn't push the matter. Eventually, the relatives chose a man named Hafiz Rahman for Sima, who was only 3 years older than her. He had no bad habits, and all the relatives described him as a calm, balanced, and sensible person. Hafiz had lived his entire life in Pakistan and had never left the country. His parents wanted a better life for their son and believed that somewhere in Europe, greater opportunities awaited him. Thus, they were very pleased when they were offered a bride from the UK and immediately gave their consent. Once the relatives settled all the details, preparations for the wedding began. The families organized a lavish celebration for their heirs, attended by over 200 guests. The marriage was formalized in Pakistan, following all religious and civil norms, and afterward, the young bride flew back to Luton to begin the process of securing a marriage visa for her husband so he could join her. The paperwork took some time, so Hafiz and Sima didn't actually start living together until 2008. By then, Sima was 26 years old and her husband was 29. The couple moved into a spacious, multi-level apartment owned by the Khan family, where the younger siblings also lived. There was enough room for everyone, and all the family members got along well. Hafiz obtained a driver's license and started working for the city's taxi service. Initially, he wanted his wife not to work as is customary in Muslim countries, but to focus on household chores and raising children. However, Sima, who was used to earning her own money and being independent, flatly refused, as she greatly enjoyed her work. Her husband didn't insist and accepted her position. However, as their children were born, Sima had to significantly adjust her work schedule. In 2009, Sima gave birth to their first daughter. 3 years later, she had a son, followed by a second son 2 years later, and in 2015, their youngest daughter was born. Sima managed to brilliantly balance work and motherhood, though her younger sister Sabah always helped her with the children, watching over them while everyone else was at work. Corrupt passion. Meanwhile, in what appeared to be the happy and prosperous Khan family, events were unfolding that no one suspected. The younger daughter had fallen in love with her older sister's husband as soon as he moved into their home. At the time, Sabah was only 18 years old, and Hafiz seemed to her the perfect man. He didn't exert any moral pressure on his wife, allowed her to work and make her own choices, was kind to all the household members, and never even raised his voice. At first, Sabah showed him only subtle signs of attention, longing glances, sighs, awkward touches, and shy smiles. The experienced man immediately recognized Sabah's hints, but at first he didn't show it, merely observing her. He was flattered by the fact that this young woman, 10.5 years his junior, had tender feelings for him. This continued for about 2 years, but after the birth of their first child, when Sima was fully absorbed in caring for their daughter, Hafiz took advantage of Sabah's naivety and innocence, seducing her. From that point on, their secret affair began, developing right under the noses of the entire family, though no one noticed it, or perhaps no one wanted to notice. Hafiz believed he loved both women equally, and at one point he even considered formally taking a second wife. However, he soon learned that he couldn't marry the sisters, as this contradicted not only Islamic traditions, but also all norms of morality and ethics. Nevertheless, his relationship with Sabah did not end. The relationship between the married man and his wife's younger sister was corrupt, and thus it couldn't be allowed to become known. The lovers tried to minimize their interactions in front of other family members, but they constantly exchanged messages in which they confessed their feelings and arranged times and places for their meetings. They typically arranged their intimate encounters in the back seat of the car Hafiz used for his taxi job, or they indulged in pleasures in the marital bedroom when no one was home. Hafiz would adjust his schedule to have time with his young lover while the rest of the family was at work, ensuring they wouldn't be caught. Unplanned pregnancy. As time passed, Sabah became more insistent, demanding more attention and growing increasingly jealous of her lover's relationship with her sister. At 23, when her parents decided it was time to find a husband for their younger daughter, she reacted very differently from Sima. Sabah rejected the idea outright, pleading with them to wait, explaining that she also wanted to pursue an education like her sister, and asking them to delay the marriage for at least a couple of years. Though perplexed, her parents eventually gave in and postponed the search for a groom. In the fall of 2014, while Sima and Hafiz were expecting their fourth child, Sabah suddenly realized she was pregnant as well. She confided in her lover, but the man was overcome with terror and panicked. He knew that if the truth came out, it would end his marriage, bring disgrace to the entire family, and make his own life unbearable. The only solution was to terminate the unwanted pregnancy before anyone found out. Sabah understood this was the only viable option, but she was also aware of how dangerous and risky this step could be for her. She suggested they flee to another country where no one could find them, but the man refused outright as he loved his wife and children and could never abandon them. Therefore, the young lover was forced to end her unborn child's life, which was a tremendous shock for her and likely took a serious toll on her mental health. Previously, Sabah hadn't considered the consequences of her affair with her sister's husband. She simply lived in her fantasies, where she and Hafiz were happy together, with no Sima or her children in the picture. But after her parents started talking about marriage, she became scared. She realized that she had given her innocence to another man, which was already a disgrace for her and the entire family, even if no one knew who her lover was. Now, after the termination of the pregnancy, she was uncertain about how the procedure might affect her health in the future and whether she would be able to have children at all. These thoughts tormented and consumed Sabah from within. These thoughts tormented and consumed Sabah from within, robbing her of peace and sleep, making her irritable and bitter. To make matters worse, Hafiz distanced himself from her after the termination. He feared that the situation could repeat itself, so he became very cautious and seemed to have decided to break off the relationship with his lover. By that time, he and Simon had welcomed their fourth child, and he spent all his time with his wife and children as if trying to atone for his guilt. A mad plan. Sabah found herself almost unable to interact with her lover face to face, as he was either at work or with his family. However, she sent Hafiz hundreds of messages daily, sometimes swearing her love, other times threatening to do something to herself if he didn't be with her as before, and at times even threatening to reveal their affair to their parents. She was driving the man to madness, and he didn't know what to do or how to handle the situation. Since both Hafiz and Sima were working while still living in the family home, they had managed to save a substantial amount of money over the years, enough to buy their own place. At the beginning of 2016, during a family meeting, Hafiz brought up the topic, noting that Sabah would soon be married off, and the younger brothers were also starting to look for brides. Once everyone had their own families, the house would become very crowded. Hafiz pointed out that it was time for him, his wife, and their growing 4 children to get their own home. While Sima's younger siblings could continue living with their parents for a while longer, the Khan spouses agreed with their son-in-law's opinion and supported him. However, when Sabah heard that her lover was planning to move out, she literally lost her mind. She felt like her world was falling apart, that her sister was stealing the man she loved, and something needed to be done immediately. Overcome with jealousy and rage, she envied her sister and believed that Sima didn't deserve such happiness. At some point, Sabah decided that the only solution was the death of her own sister, as that would be the only way for her and her husband to be together. She reasoned that if Sima were gone, the main problem would disappear with her, as Hafiz would never consider divorce. But as a widower, he could marry again, even his late wife's sister. Searching for a solution. Over the next few months, Sabah scoured the internet daily, searching for ways to discreetly end someone's life, making it appear as an accident without arousing suspicion. However, her sister had no health issues, wasn't allergic to anything, and wasn't taking any medication. She looked into ads for selling poisonous snakes and spiders, but was deterred by the thought that other family members might be harmed. Additionally, Sabah herself was terribly afraid of insects and reptiles, so she couldn't bring anything like that into the house and release it. She dismissed the idea of using poisons, fearing that experts would detect traces of toxic substances and trace them back to her. One day, she stumbled upon a website offering various magical services. A certain sorcerer claimed he could enchant anyone, create protective charms, attract wealth, heal, and even cast deadly curses. The last option intrigued Sabah, and she decided this might be the perfect solution to her problem. In early April 2016, the plotter contacted the sorcerer and asked him to eliminate Sima using black magic as quickly as possible. She sent him photos and a few personal items of her sister, which he said were necessary to conduct the death ritual, and she also transferred a payment of $7,000 to the account he provided, money she had saved over several years. As expected, the ritual didn't work. Sima felt great. She and her husband had already found a suitable house and were actively preparing to move. Sabah fell into despair. She tried to reach the sorcerer again, but after receiving the money, he simply stopped responding. Meanwhile, the Khan couple was already busy searching for a groom for their younger daughter, so time was running out, and the problem needed to be solved urgently. The girl even considered finding a hitman, but firstly, she had given all her savings to the sorcerer, so she had no way to pay a hired criminal, and secondly, she was held back by the fear of being caught. Feeling her plans falling apart, Sabah decided to take matters into her own hands and personally eliminate her sister. Online, she found information on how to convincingly stage a robbery and decided to make it look like a burglar had broken into the house and Sima became his unfortunate victim. However, the main problem was that the Khan family consisted of 11 people, all living under one roof, and someone was always home. The right moment. As Sabah desperately pondered how to execute her sinister and ruthless plan, tragic news suddenly arrived about the death of a Khan family relative living in another city. Her parents, brothers, and brother-in-law immediately began preparing for the trip to attend the funeral and pay their last respects. At home, only Sima, who couldn't go due to her work, her younger sister, who was watching the children, and the children themselves, aged 7, 4, 2, and 1 remained. Sabah quickly realized that this was her only chance to carry out her plan, and there would be no better opportunity. So as soon as she heard about the relative's death and the upcoming trip to the funeral, she went to the nearest supermarket that same day, bought a large kitchen knife, and hid it in her room. Large kitchen knife and hid it in her room. On the morning of May 23, 2016, Hafiz drove his mother-in-law, father-in-law, and 2 brothers-in-law to another city for the funeral, planning to return late in the evening. After lunch, Simo went to work and was also expected back no earlier than midnight. Sabah stayed home with the 4 children. She had time to think everything through once more stayed home with the 4 children. She had time to think everything through once more and prepare for the terrible crime. Brutal attack on a mother of many. Sabah put the children to bed early, then went downstairs and called her sister, saying that her youngest daughter was fussy and seemed to have a fever. The news of her child feeling unwell prompted Sima to finish work early and leave around 10 o'clock in the evening. By 10:30, she arrived home, but it was dark and quiet. The outdoor surveillance camera recorded her entering the house and turning on the light, but less than a minute later, it went out. As soon as Sima crossed the threshold and closed the door behind her, Sabah attacked her from behind, delivering several strong blows to her neck. It's likely that the victim didn't even see who assaulted her, and the initial wounds were fatal, causing her to bleed out within minutes. However, the frenzied sister continued to stab the unfortunate woman even after she stopped showing signs of life. The neighbors heard a few loud screams, but everything quickly quieted down, and no one called the police, thinking it was something insignificant. The noise and commotion woke Simon's eldest daughter, who came out of her room. The girl approached the stairs but didn't descend into the dark, only asking what was happening. Her aunt shouted for her to go back to bed immediately, and the child obeyed. After the gruesome attack, Sabah removed her blood-soaked clothes and wrapped them in a plastic bag along with the weapon. She also added some hastily gathered jewelry and valuables from the house. She planned to dispose of the bundle later, but hadn't figured out how yet, so she hid it behind a wardrobe in her room, believing no one would think to search there for evidence. The criminal took a shower and only then noticed several cuts on her hands sustained during the attack on her sister. She then broke a window by the back door to make it look like a burglar had entered the house, and upon encountering the unexpectedly returned homeowner, decided to eliminate the witness. Only after this did Sabah call the police to report her sister's death. A very strange crime. The emergency responders who arrived at the scene could do nothing for the victim and only confirmed her death. The crime scene stunned even seasoned officers, resembling a bloodbath, but the sheer brutality of the act suggested a personal motive behind the attack on the young woman. According to the only witness, Sabah, she had put the children to bed and dozed off with them in the room, but not before calling her sister and asking her to come home early because the youngest daughter was fussy. Sabah claimed that she didn't hear an intruder enter the house and only woke up when she heard screams. Concerned for the children, she cautiously left the room only a few minutes later. By that time, the house was already quiet. Descending the stairs, she stumbled upon her sister's mutilated body and immediately called her relatives and emergency services. The police noticed several deep cuts on Sabah's hands and asked how she got them. The girl hesitated a bit, but then said she must have cut herself on the broken glass from the window that the intruder shattered. The returning members of the Khan family were devastated by grief and couldn't immediately say if anything was missing from their home, but later noted the disappearance of some jewelry and valuables. Everything pointed to a burglar entering the house and taking Sima's life when she unexpectedly returned. However, the nature of the crime and its ferocity suggested otherwise. The medical examiners counted 68 stab wounds on the victim's body, most of which were concentrated on her neck, face, and chest. The young woman's throat was slashed so deeply that her head was nearly severed, and her right arm was hanging by a mere flap of skin. This led the forensic experts to speculate that the criminal was a strong man, but no leads had been found yet. When asked if the murdered woman had any enemies or ill-wishers, her relatives unanimously dismissed the idea, noting that Sima was kind, honest, and respectable, and everyone around her loved her. However, during questioning, the younger sister unexpectedly claimed that the deceased allegedly had an affair she kept secret from everyone, and a jealous lover might have been the one to deal with her. Sabah's words and behavior aroused serious suspicion. From the beginning, she appeared calm and seemed not to mourn the loss. Her testimony during the interrogation sounded rehearsed, and now it seemed she was deliberately trying to tarnish her sister's honor, who could no longer defend herself. Irrefutable evidence. In their search for any leads, the detectives decided to seize the Khan family's home computer and examine the contents of the mobile phones of all family members. This led to a major breakthrough in the case, as they discovered not only irrefutable evidence, but also uncovered the motive behind such a brutal crime. The investigators were able to recover deleted messages from Sabah's and Hafiz's phones, revealing their long-term intimate relationship. Sabah repeatedly professed her love for her sister's husband, saying she couldn't live without him and arranging meetings, to which he responded in kind. However, in the past few months, the tone of their communication had changed drastically. Hafiz asked her to leave him alone, stating that everything was over. The messages also revealed that Sabah had been pregnant with Sima's husband's child, but terminated the pregnancy at his request. The restored search history on the home computer eliminated any remaining doubt about Sabah's guilt. It turned out that over the past 6 months, she had desperately been searching for ways to get rid of her sister and even tried to place a deadly curse on her before deciding to personally deal with the relative she saw as a rival. Thanks to surveillance footage from a supermarket, it was established that the suspect had bought a knife there the day before the tragedy, likely the weapon used in the crime. A thorough search of the house followed, and in a hidden spot in Sabah's room, investigators found a bundle containing her blood-stained clothes, the knife, and the missing jewelry. Trial and sentence. Sabah Khan was arrested on May 31, 2016, 8 days after she committed the crime. The entire family was in shock and couldn't believe that such intense emotions had been brewing right under their noses for years, with their son-in-law essentially living with both sisters for 4 years. The parents couldn't comprehend how their younger daughter could decide to end her sister's life and how they would now live with this reality. The trial of the criminal began in October 2017. Sabah claimed that Hafiz had taken advantage of her innocence and seduced her. Afterward, he allegedly manipulated her feelings for years to satisfy his needs and ultimately drove her to take such a desperate step. Naturally, Hafiz denied all responsibility, shifting the blame entirely onto Sabah, claiming that she had been the one pursuing him. The defendant admitted to the premeditated brutal attack on her sister, but she never expressed remorse for her actions, behaving calmly, even detachedly during the court proceedings. She was sentenced to life imprisonment, with the possibility of parole after no less than 25 years. She is currently serving her sentence in one of Bedfordshire's correctional facilities. Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe to my channel. There are many shocking stories ahead of you.